Position picks your starting hands. In online poker games, you do not get to choose your cards, but you absolutely choose when you play them. That is what position really buys you. The more players left to act, the more often your hand gets punished. The fewer players left to act, the more often your hand realizes its equity and prints expected value. Your preflop hand selection is not about being tight or loose. It is about building a range that survives the streets. If you want a simple rule that actually holds up under pressure, here it is. Position lets you play more hands, and it lets you play them more aggressively. Why position changes? Everything preflop. Position is information. When you act last, you see checks, you see bet sizes, and you get to control pot size. That is why the button can open hands that would be torching money from under the gun. Preflop, we care about two things that position directly affects. First is equity realization, how much of your hand's raw equity you convert into actual winnings. Second is range protection, whether your range can withstand pressure from players who have position on you. In a rake environment, especially at small to mid-stakes online, marginal opens and loose flats lose extra expected value. Position offsets that tax because you realize more equity and win more pots without showdown. The hand selection ladders. Position. Think of positions as a ladder of permission. The earlier you are, the more your range must be compact, strong, and play well under heat. The later you are, the more you can widen into suited, connected, and offensively useful hands. First, under the gun and under the gun, +1, your range is strong and linear. You want hands that make top pair with good kickers, overpairs, and nutted draws. Weak offsuit Broadway and small suited junk do not have the post-flop playability to survive multi-way pots and squeezes. Second, MP, you can add some suited connectors and more suited Broadways, but your selection still needs discipline. There are still many players left to act, and you are still getting 3-bet at meaningful frequencies by competent regulars. Third, cutoff. This is where profitable stealing starts to ramp. You can open wider because only button and blinds are behind, and both blinds are out of position post-flop. Your range gains expected value from fold equity alone. Fourth, button, you are the CEO of the table. You can open the widest because you maximize information and pot control post-flop. This is where hands like Ace-5 suited, King-9 suited, Queen-9 suited, and suited connectors become consistent winners, not because they magically improved, but because you improved their environment. Fifth, small blind. Avoid the temptation to complete and see a flop. That is hope poker. In most online pools, the small blind should be mostly raise or fold. When you do play, you are almost always out of position versus the big blind, so hand selection must be tighter than the button. Sixth, big blind. You defend wide because you are priced in, but that is not the same as saying you defend anything. Rake punishes weak defenses and you will be out of position post-flop versus every open except the small blind. What hands gain the most from position? Your range widens as you move later, but it should not widen randomly. Some hand classes benefit from position far more than others. First, suited connectors and suited one-gappers. Hands like 9-8 suited and 10-8 suited love position because they realize equity through semi-bluffs, delayed c-bet, and taking free cards. Out of position, they get barreled off their equity too often. Second, suited Ace-X hands like Ace-5 suited or Ace-4 suited are powerful on the button because they block strong continues, can 3-bet as bluffs, and make nut flushes. From early position, they often create awkward top pair spots with weak kickers when they are not suited wheel Ace-X. Third, offsuit Broadways, hands like King-Jack offsuit and Queen-Jack offsuit are the classic trouble hands. They look pretty, but when you're out of position, they make dominated top pairs and bleed in large pots. They gain expected value in late position because you can control pot size and extract thinner value safely. Fourth, small pairs avoid the set mining mentality. You are not paying to hit a set, you are entering with a hand that can win multiple ways. In position, small pairs can float, stab, and apply pressure on favorable runouts. Out of position, they often check fold too much and realize poorly. Who is left to act decides your range. Do not choose hands in a vacuum. Choose them based on who is behind you. In online environments, when multi-tabling, it is easy to autopilot your opens by position alone. That is a leak. If the button is a strong 3-better and the blinds are squeeze happy, your MP and cutoff opens should tighten and skew toward hands that continue well versus 3-bet, like ace-queen offsuit, ace-jack suited, king-queen suited, and pocket nines and better. If the players behind you are passive callers, you can open more suited hands that play well, post-flop, and value bet thinner. This is where expected value comes from. Hand selection is opponent selection because you are selecting who gets position on you and who you get position on. Opening versus flatting, position pushes you toward aggression. In position, you should prefer raising to calling. Raising leverages fold equity, builds initiative, and helps you realize equity. Flatting invites squeezes and creates multi-way pots where your hand's equity realization drops sharply. Out of position, you should be even more careful with calls. When you call in the blinds, you often enter a pot where you will be guessing on later streets. The expected value of guessing is not 0, it is negative. That is why disciplined pre-flop selection matters. There are exceptions, but as a baseline for online cash games, especially with rake, tighten your flats and earn your looseness with position. Hand scenario. Button buys options. Game, 100 big blinds, online cash, 6 max. Hero is on the button. With Jack of Hearts, 10 of Hearts, cutoff folds, hero opens to 2.2 big blinds. Big blind calls. Flop, Queen of Spades, 9 of Diamonds, 3 of Clubs. Big blind checks. Hero bets 1.5. Big blinds into 4.9 big blinds. Action, big blind calls. Turn is 2 of Hearts. Big blind checks. Hero checks back. River, King of Clubs. Big blind checks. Hero bets 8 big blinds into 7.9 big blinds. This is a clean example of why late position hand selection expands into suited connectors and suited broadways. With position, you get to c-bet small to leverage fold equity, take a free card when range is narrow, then apply pressure on a river that smashes your perceived range. If you tried to play the same hand from under the gun, you face more 3-bet pre-flop and you land in more multi-way pots where this line becomes fragile. Common position leaks that destroy your win rate. First, opening too loose, under the gun, you do not get extra points for playing like the button from early position. You just donate to 3-bet and tough post-flop spots. Second, calling too much in the small blind. The small blind is the most overpriced seat at the table. Passive completes and loose flats are slow expected value leaks, and rake makes them worse. Third, over-defending the big blind with trash. Being priced in is not a license to defend dominated offsuit hands that cannot realize equity. Choose hands with playability. Fourth, ignoring player types behind you. If a thinking regular is on your left, your marginal opens shrink. If a passive player is on your left, your opens expand. Context dictates strategy. Key takeaway. Your pre-flop range should widen as you gain position, because equity realization and fold equity both increase when you act later. Tighten early because more players can 3-bet or call, and you will be forced to play more streets out of position. In online cash games with rake, favor hands that are strong, connected, and suited, and avoid passive set mining and loose small blind flats that cannot show a clear expected value path. Now, let's test your edge. Question 1. What 2 pre-flop concepts does the article say position directly affects? Answer, equity realization and range protection. Explanation, acting later helps you convert more raw equity into winnings and makes it easier for your range to withstand pressure from players who have position on you. Question 2. In most online pools, what baseline approach should you take from the small blind? Answer, mostly raise or fold, avoid completing and loose flats. Explanation. The article calls passive completes hope poker and explains that you're usually out of position versus the big blind, with rake making loose. Small blind calls a slow expected value leak. Question 3. If the button is a strong 3-better and the blinds are squeeze happy, how should your MP and cutoff opening range adjust? And which hands does the article list as better continues versus 3-bet? Answer: tighten and skew toward hands that continue well versus 3-bet. Ace-Queen offsuit, Ace-Jack suited, King-Queen suited, and pocket nines and better. Explanation: with aggressive players behind you, marginal opens get punished more often, so the article recommends narrowing into stronger hands that can withstand 3-bet pressure. Question 4. According to the article, why should you generally prefer raising to calling when you have position pre-flop? Answer: raising leverages fold equity, builds initiative, and helps you realize equity. Calling invites squeezes and multi-way pots that reduce equity realization. Explanation: the text emphasizes that flatting in position often creates worse pot structures, while opening or raising lets you win pots without showdown and play with initiative. Question 5. In the button buys options scenario, what is the core reason the article gives for why late position expands into hands like suited connectors and suited broadways? Answer: position lets you bet small for fold equity, take free cards when ranges narrow, and apply pressure on favorable rivers that hit your perceived range. Explanation: the example shows how acting last creates options across streets while playing the same hand from early position faces more 3-bet and more fragile multi-way outcomes. Study hard, play smart. That's it for now. I'll see you in the next lesson.